November 1986 changed everything for Audi. An explosive news report aired on CBS's 60 Minutes showing 6 weeping victims of unintended acceleration and an unsettling clip of an Audi 5000 taking off for no reason and horrified viewers. The report was damning and terrifying. There was only one problem. The CBS video of the Audi shifting into gear and launching away was totally fabricated using a car rigged by a so-called expert witness involved in an unintended acceleration lawsuit against Audi and its parent company Volkswagen. In other words, the media had teamed up with a questionable professional and dealt Audi an entirely fictitious low blow. Follow this extraordinary case through with us as we examine the countrywide fear of this imaginary problem and how the fallout hit Audi so desperately hard. So, unintended acceleration. What did that mean in the 1980s? Well, technically, we're talking about any incident where a car accelerated, whether in drive or reverse, when the driver didn't intend for it to happen. For Audi, the reports were often the same. Cars were suddenly accelerating or reversing just after shifting from park, leading to accidents. These started trickling in abnormally high quantities in 1983. By 1986, complaints submitted to NHTSA had potentially linked the Audi 5000 to about 700 incidents, including 6 tragic deaths. The image that might spring to your mind, the same image the media pushed on the American public, is one of a runaway Audi of evil suddenly shifting itself out of park and revving up to full speed, mercilessly mowing down whiskers on kittens, warm woolen mittens, and brown paper packages tied up with string. The cars were rising up, if you believe the hype, of course. The Audi 5000 was, in almost everyone's opinion, pretty good. It was virtually exactly the same as the Audi 100 or Audi 200 marketed in Europe and across the rest of the world, carrying that air of European luxury and refinement. The 5000 was the predecessor to the A6, and its big selling point was the remarkably low drag coefficient of 0.30. The car also introduced a turbocharger option, which was far from standard for vehicles of the time, especially in North America. Despite its popularity, claims of unintended acceleration started to come in thick and fast starting in 1983. But remarkably, they were almost exclusively to the US. Hundreds of thousands of models were made and sold worldwide, but hardly anyone else mentioned the problem. Sure, a few whispers on the issue popped up occasionally in Canada and Europe, but nothing out of the ordinary. So why America? Why not elsewhere? And most intriguingly, why were the brakes allegedly failing at the same time as the engine activated wide open throttle, almost exclusively in automatic transmissions? The first thing that Audi, the Department of Transport, and many other independent bodies tested was how effective the brakes really were. The results were crystal clear and can be seen on Audi's PR film linked below. Even when traveling at 70 miles an hour, firmly applying the brakes brings the Audi 5000 to a definitive halt. There was no way the engine was somehow revving up and overpowering the brakes, especially from low speeds or standstill. Audi, NHTSA, and individual investigators all reached the same definitive conclusion. There was no evidence of a mechanical problem with the 5000's throttle body, accelerator pedal, linkages, brakes, or transmission. In Audi's PR film, racing driver Bob Unser explains the following: "In no instance have the government engineers been able to find any sort of mechanical malfunction in the Audi 5000 that could possibly account for unintended acceleration, nor have Audi engineers been able to identify any vehicle component as the culprit. In the Audi 5000 in particular, no breakdown or failure of any of the car's systems could produce an open throttle and simultaneous brake failure." After months and years of detailed investigations, Audi concluded that the pedals vastly differed from the type most American consumers were typically used to. They were thinner and more subtle. Was it possible that American drivers were simply pushing the accelerator pedal instead of the brakes? Were US consumers basically not used to European styling and therefore crashing their own vehicles? Well, yes. In fact, that's the only plausible explanation for virtually every case. But very few people were willing to admit that. And that, as we'll see, gave Audi a real headache. There was a particularly strong correlation between unintended acceleration and drivers who were either inexperienced or new to the Audi brand. Bob Unser continues, "The research Audi has conducted, as well as the reports we've received from government and independent sources, show the correlation between both a driver's familiarity with the Audi 5000 and unintended acceleration incidents. For example, an astonishing 20% of these incidents were experienced by people who had never driven an Audi 5000 before. Why is it happening with greater frequency in the Audi 5000 than in other cars?" Our studies specifically on Audi reveal that a great majority of Audi 5000 drivers are new to the Audi automobile. As a European luxury sedan, the driver's area of the Audi is different from what they may have been used to. The seat, the steering wheel, and the size and position of the pedals. These differences, combined with people's acquired automotive habits, could result in unintended acceleration. The first recalls from Audi came in 1982 and 1983, with reports of unintended acceleration affecting Audi 5000s from the 1978 to 1983 model years. In other words, the second generation models. The initial recall involved using screws to fix the floor mats in place, preventing them from interfering with the pedals. The second was to install a spacer on the brake pedal, making it sit further away from the accelerator. A third started in August 1986, a few months before the release of the CBS 60 Minutes report, which sent the country into a frenzy. It was initially a service advisory, but updated to a full safety recall in January 1987 per NHTSA's advice. This recall was to introduce a transmission lock. Transmission locks are now commonplace on all motor vehicles with an automatic transmission. They prevent the driver from shifting into drive or reverse without having their foot on the brake. With all these recalls, Audi had covered everything. Or had they? Well, there was one more problem worth mentioning, the idle stabilization system. It isn't particularly important, but history tends not to remember this aspect, so in the next video, let's set the record straight. Thanks for watching part 1 of our video investigating Audi's unintended acceleration. Stay tuned for part 2, and as always, if you enjoyed this content, please leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.